Hello, this is Mike Morrison with IZ Golf. This video is about the various kinds of custom fitting, the kind of custom fitting we do, and what actually most of the rest of the world does. There's some classic tenets of what we call fitting cart fitting, which is predominantly what is done. The things that are the foundation of that concept are that club head speed is a good marker for flex. The flex that a shaft is marked is actually an effective way of knowing what you're playing. That length and lie are best figured out by hitting off of a plastic sheet or a lie board sitting on the ground, and grip size is almost an incidental. You got something on the end of it to hang on to. That process and ours are very different. What our process is based on is research that True Temper did, and their R&D group, to realize that no, swing speed is not a good indicator of flex, because what they found is amongst a whole bunch of scratch players, as they took them to a driving range and tested them for loading, they had similar swing speed, similar tempo groups, yet very different results as far as how much load or force was being applied to the shaft. And what I mean by that is how much bending or loading is going on as you hit the golf ball, and that's the key to what flex the shaft needs to be. We utilize that technology to measure loading instead of swing speed for the golfer. The plus of measuring loading is, regardless of whether someone's a 30 handicap or a scratch golfer, they all load the same. Sorry, not load the same. They all load consistently. And the plus of loading consistently is, what loading is a measure of what do I consider the amount of force to move a golf ball when you put it on the ground to move it. And I've got my opinion of what that is, and each of our customers has theirs. The plus is we repeat that concept every time we swing the golf club. Now, we don't always arrive at the ball consistently and hit it to the same place, but our concept of how to do that's the same, and that causes very consistent loading to be applied to the shaft, swing to swing to swing. It's why when we get a shaft that fits us well, we hang on to it in our favorite club. Our game and our loading doesn't change one week to the next. We load the same, swing to swing to swing, even if our results are different. So the plus is we utilize a system that uses that load measuring technology, which is a very consistent thing regardless of whether we got a 30 handicap or a scratch or a 10 handicap or whatever as our customer. The second piece that we use is a way to say, okay, we don't believe these bands and these markers on these shafts don't mean that much, because we have no standard for flex in the industry. So what we use is looking at how this shaft responds to being loaded as our way of figuring out what these things are, and it's also how we build. And that relates to what's called frequency, or cycles per minute. And so what happens is we butt clamp the shaft, pull it under a certain amount of loading, let it free to oscillate, and the cycles per minute, or how it responds to being loaded by being butt clamped, is how we get an indicator of what these things are. And so again, the issue without a standard is that, you know, somebody's regular can be someone else's stiff or extra stiff, or vice versa. And the classic is, our graphite regular is really very consistent as regulars and the answer is no. And so classically, customers will have played or hit a graphite regular and say, oh, I can't play graphite because it's too soft. Well, unfortunately, that graphite regular wasn't really a regular. It was a flex below ladies flex, and yes, you can't play that flex, but graphite in the correct flex and responding correctly, you can play. So those are just some of the issues as far as the lack of standards that we have in flex, and how individuals attribute the lack of standard of flex to something else other than flex, because there's just not really a way you can really know what you're dealing with. But in our process, what we do is we measure our customers to how much they load the shaft. The plus is they're very consistent in doing that. Then we measure the equipment using a frequency meter to say, okay, what is this? And the plus is also then what happens is that we will find the favorite club. We'll also find the ones that don't fit, if there are the ones that don't fit. And what's the other issue then? Whether ones that don't fit are too stiff, or they're too soft, they're too light swing weight wise, too heavy swing weight wise, which is a balance issue, too long, too short, grip size is wrong, etc. That's what our process does. We go through and analyze every piece to say, okay, what should you have and what do you have? If there are certain clubs you have that fit you fine, done. That's what we're going to tell you, and you go home with that exact golf club. If there are ones that don't fit you well, then fine. We will analyze through what weight of shaft, standard weight versus lightweight, graphite versus steel. Take a look at that. Take a look at length the way we have for some 50 years. Figure out what grip size, how well the putter sets up. Also, if the customer chooses, talk through wedges and which ones, and bounce, and what's bounce good for and isn't it, and where, and etc. So these are all the pieces of the things that we do when we custom fit, and that causes the fitting to take about 2.5 hours to go through. And so our custom fitting method is extremely different than the predominant of what else other people find in a big box golf retail store, or in with the Country Club Pro, or even with another custom shop, quote unquote. Again, it's because custom is a very ill-defined term. But that's what we do. We have more information within this site about how we do this. Thank you for listening. Bye.